Welcome. Take a deep breath and allow your body to settle into stillness. This is Boring History for Sleep, where we travel back in time together, not for excitement or thrills, but for calm immersion in the rhythms of the past. Tonight, we begin a journey into the world of the medieval city, a place often imagined as grand and bustling, with towering cathedrals, crowded markets, and winding streets. But beneath the stone walls and lively fairs, daily life was marked by discomfort, constant labor, and conditions that, for most of us today, would feel overwhelming and unendurable. We will explore what it was really like to live there. We will walk the streets in our imagination, smell the air, and hear the sounds. We will meet a healer working tirelessly against the limits of knowledge, uncover what archaeology reveals in the waste left behind, and then contrast it all with the life of the city's wealthiest. So, close your eyes if you wish, and allow the steady rhythm of history to carry you back. Daily life in a medieval city. Imagine yourself waking up in a small, timber-framed room, tucked high in the upper stories of a medieval house. The beams creak above you, and the faint light of dawn filters in through a shuttered window. There is no glass, only a wooden panel, and a draft slips easily through the cracks. The bedding beneath you is stuffed with straw, flattened and uneven, and it gives off a faint, musty scent. You stir and rise. Your day will not begin with leisure or quiet preparation, but with the unavoidable noise of the city already stirring awake outside your door. Horses' hooves clatter on the cobblestones, wheels of wooden carts rattle and grind, and traders call out as they haul their goods toward the market square. The first task of your day is simple but ever-present: water. You must carry it up from the nearest fountain or well, often a communal place where your neighbors gather as well. The bucket is heavy, and the streets are crowded, forcing you to navigate carefully. The water itself is cloudy, drawn from sources often shared by animals and industry. It carries with it the faint taste of earth and the metallic tang of the city's pipes, if there are any pipes at all. As you make your way home, the narrow lanes press in close. The buildings are tall, their upper stories leaning toward each other, leaving only thin strips of sky above. The air is thick with odors, wood smoke from breakfast fires, the damp smell of yesterday's rain soaking into timber, and, less pleasantly, the waste that households empty from chamber pots directly into the street. A shout might come from a window above, and suddenly liquid splashes into the gutter beside you. It is an everyday reality, and you learn to step carefully. Food is next. Perhaps a small loaf of coarse bread, its crust hard, its flour dark with husks and grit left from rough milling. If you are fortunate, there may be a wedge of cheese or a little ale to wash it down. Meals are simple, repetitive, and filling rather than flavorful. The rhythm of eating is practical. It fuels the long hours of labor that lie ahead. Your work depends on your station. As a craftsman, you may spend the day in a cramped workshop, the smell of wood shavings or hot metal thick in the air. As a servant, you may scrub, fetch, and carry. For many women, life means endless cycles of grinding grain, tending children, patching worn clothing, and trying to stretch meager resources to feed a family. For apprentices, there is both learning and drudgery, long hours with little pay, discipline sharp and unyielding. Noise is constant. The cries of vendors fill the market square. Fishmongers with baskets that smell sharply of salt and brine. Cloth sellers displaying bolts of wool dyed in deep colors. Spice merchants with precious powders measured in careful pinches. There is haggling, laughter, and the occasional scuffle. Above it all, the great bell of the church marks the hours, a reminder of time's passage and the city's order. But beneath the liveliness lies strain. Crowds press shoulder to shoulder. Disease spreads easily, carried in fleas, in water, in the very air. The streets themselves, though busy, are uneven and muddy, sometimes slick with refuse. Shoes wear thin quickly, and feet grow sore. For the poor, there is little escape. Every day begins and ends in this same crowded, noisy world. As evening falls, the atmosphere changes. Candles and lanterns cast flickering pools of light, but much of the city is swallowed in shadow. The streets are less safe now, and most people retreat indoors. Families gather around the warmth of a small hearth, the fire crackling, its smoke curling toward the thatched roof. Stories may be told, prayers whispered, and simple tasks, mending, stirring, or sweeping, carried out in dim light. And then, once again, you lie down upon straw bedding, listening to the muffled sounds of the city quieting for the night, the occasional bark of a dog, the distant toll of a bell, the whisper of wind slipping between crooked shutters. Tomorrow will be the same. The rhythm of their lives is steady, demanding, and unrelenting. The biography of a medieval physician. Now, let us turn from the noisy streets and crowded workshops and step into the quieter, though no less challenging, world of healing. Imagine yourself as a physician in a medieval city. The role is both respected and deeply burdened, for the people around you look to you for answers that are often beyond your grasp. Your training may have begun not in a hospital, but in a university or monastery, where medical texts were read and copied with care. Much of the knowledge available to you is drawn from the works of Galen and Hippocrates, ancient authorities whose words are treated with reverence. The language of instruction is Latin, and much of your learning is abstract, more theory than practical experience. Each day, you rise early. Your home, though modest, is more comfortable than that of the peasants outside. You may have a small library of precious books, bound in leather, their pages filled with neat script. On your table are tools of your trade, brass instruments, glass vessels, and carefully labeled jars of herbs. The faint, sharp smell of dried sage and rosemary fills the air, mingled with earthy notes of valerian root and bitter wormwood. Patients arrive one by one, sometimes carried by family, sometimes limping on their own. A woman complains of fever and chills. A young boy has a deep cough that rattles his chest. An old man speaks of pains that come and go in his joints. Each person looks to you for relief, yet you must interpret their suffering within the framework of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. To you, imbalance in these fluids is the root of illness. You may prescribe a regimen of diet, suggesting foods that will restore harmony, or you may prepare a poultice, crushing herbs with a mortar and pestle, the grinding sound steady and rhythmic. Leeches may be applied to draw out excess blood. Their cool, slippery bodies placed carefully on the skin. For coughs, syrups sweetened with honey are offered, mixed with herbs thought to soothe the lungs. The treatments are sincere, though their effectiveness is often uncertain. The physician's life is also marked by moments of helplessness. During times of epidemic, when sickness spreads rapidly through the crowded streets, your door is besieged by the desperate. You attempt to tend to them, moving from one bedside to another, but the tools at your disposal are limited. You may wear a long robe and a mask stuffed with herbs, believing it will protect you from the corrupted air. Yet within your heart, you know that even your learning cannot halt the tide. Still, there are moments of gratitude. A child recovers after a fever breaks, and the family thanks you with gifts of bread or coins. A wound heals cleanly, and the patient spreads word of your skill. You walk through the streets with a certain dignity, robe flowing, cap pulled low, and people step aside, both in respect and in quiet fear of what you may carry. Beyond illness, your role extends into the everyday. You are called to advise wealthy patrons on their diets, their exercise, and even their moods. A nobleman may ask which wines are most suitable for his constitution. A wealthy woman may consult you on remedies for sleeplessness or melancholy. These moments bring comfort and security to your practice, even as the poor struggle with ailments that cannot be cured. The life of a medieval physician is not an easy one. It is a balance between knowledge and guesswork, between reverence and skepticism. You carry the burden of responsibility, knowing that each decision may bring either relief or despair. And though you strive to heal, you too are vulnerable to the same illnesses that sweep through the city. Your robes and books cannot shield you forever. And yet, the rhythm of your work continues. Patients arrive, remedies are prescribed, and prayers are whispered alongside treatments. The city around you breathes and suffers, and you, in your modest home, are a small but vital part of its fragile hope. Archaeology of cesspits. To truly understand what daily life in a medieval city was like, we often turn not only to books and chronicles, but also to what people left behind. And in medieval towns, much of what was left behind ended up underground, preserved in places few thought would ever be studied. Cesspits. A cesspit was, at its simplest, a hole in the ground used for human waste and refuse. Some were lined with wood or stone. Others were little more than damp pits dug into earth. They were common, practical, and necessary in cities where hundreds, sometimes thousands of households crowded together in narrow lanes. When one filled, it might be covered over, forgotten, and replaced by another. Over the centuries, these pits accumulated layer upon layer of discarded fragments of daily life. When archaeologists began to excavate them, they discovered not only the expected traces of waste, but also remarkable snapshots of ordinary existence. Imagine looking down into a cross-section of soil, dark layers of organic matter, rich with seeds from plants once eaten long ago, mingled with fragments of pottery, worn shoes, broken toys, and even combs still bearing strands of hair. In these small, unremarkable objects, entire stories begin to emerge. From seeds and plant remains, we learn about diet. Pits in London, for instance, reveal the gritty presence of rye, oats, and barley, staples of bread and porridge. There are fragments of apple pips, cherry stones, and the occasional exotic seed, a whisper of imported goods from far-off markets. Herbs like dill and fennel, perhaps used in cooking or as remedies, remind us that medieval households sought flavor and healing in the same plants. From broken pottery, we see the spread of trade. A shard with a green glaze might have come from a local kiln. A piece of fine stoneware, smooth and gray, may have traveled across the channel from German workshops. Even in refuse, the networks of commerce stretch out, revealing connections that tied one small city street to a larger world. Leather scraps tell us about clothing and footwear. Shoes worn down at the heel suggest long hours of walking on uneven cobbles. Belts and pouches, once practical and everyday, now rest in silence, their buckles tarnished but intact. These pieces carry the imprint of ordinary people, not kings or nobles, but those who lived and worked with little fanfare. The cesspits also preserve less tangible traces, parasites and microscopic evidence of disease. Eggs of intestinal worms survive in the soil, testifying to the ailments that plagued urban dwellers. These silent reminders confirm what we might already suspect, that the close quarters of city life brought not only noise and bustle, but also discomfort and poor health. And then there are the unexpected finds. A child's carved wooden toy, worn smooth by small hands. A delicate hairpin, perhaps once cherished and carefully arranged in the hair of a young woman preparing for a festival. Coins lost in haste, falling from pockets or purses, only to vanish beneath layers of earth. Each object whispers of an individual moment, a fleeting event that would otherwise be lost to time. As we listen to these echoes, we realize that cesspits, though unpleasant in their original purpose, have become treasure troves of knowledge. They reveal the rhythm of eating, working, and discarding. They connect us to lives lived centuries ago, lives that were ordinary, unremarkable, and yet so very human. And so, as archaeologists sift through dark soil, piece by piece, they reconstruct the medieval city not from grand monuments or royal decrees, but from seeds, shoes, and scraps of wood. The past, it seems, is often most clearly preserved in the humblest of places, the contrasting daily life of nobles and the wealthy. Thus far, we have walked through the crowded streets, felt the strain of labor, and peered into the waste left behind. But not every life in a medieval city was marked by hardship in the same way. For those of wealth and high standing, daily existence unfolded at a slower, more comfortable rhythm. Imagine stepping through the heavy wooden doors of a merchant's townhouse or a noble residence within city walls. Immediately, the air feels different. The floors are swept, sometimes covered with woven mats or even imported carpets. The walls may be painted with simple designs or hung with bright cloths that soften the space and add color to the otherwise gray stone. Light enters through glazed windows, expensive glass panes that shimmer and distort the world outside. The sounds of the street are muffled here. Servants move quietly, carrying trays, tending fires, or fetching water. In the kitchen, stews simmer gently, rich with meat and spices. A faint scent of cinnamon or saffron lingers in the air, hints of trade routes stretching across seas and deserts. These luxuries are rare in the markets outside, but here, at the tables of the wealthy, they become a mark of status. Meals are occasions in themselves. A midday dinner might begin with bread, not the coarse, husk-filled loaves of the poor, but white bread made from finely sifted flour. Roast meats are served with sauces, flavored with herbs and sweetened with honey. Fish, too, appears often, carried fresh from rivers or coasts. Wine, imported from distant vineyards, is poured into glass or pewter cups, a contrast to the wooden mugs of common households. At such tables, conversation flows. Merchants speak of deals struck and ships expected. Nobles speak of alliances, disputes, and marriages that will bind families together. Entertainment may follow. A musician plucking strings, a jester reciting verses, or even a storyteller recounting legends of saints and heroes. Daily tasks for the wealthy differ greatly. A merchant might spend his hours in an office-like chamber, writing letters with a quill, ink staining his fingers, as he calculates profits and negotiates trade. A noblewoman might oversee her household, directing servants, arranging dowries, and managing estates that stretch beyond the city walls. Children in such homes are educated, learning Latin, arithmetic, and perhaps even music. Books, rare and precious elsewhere, are kept in small collections, their bindings decorated, their pages illuminated with careful art. Evenings are gentler. Candles burn in holders of brass or silver, casting warm light across the room. Chairs are cushioned, hearths are large, and garments are lined with fur to ward off the chill. While danger and disease still lurk outside, here within these walls, the illusion of security feels almost complete. Yet wealth does not entirely shield them. Nobles still walk the same streets, though perhaps on horseback rather than on foot. Merchants still rely on the labor of countless craftsmen and apprentices. And when plague or fire sweeps through the city, no amount of privilege can fully protect them. Still, compared to the weary rhythm of the poor, their lives stand in sharp contrast. More food, more comfort, more leisure, and more space to breathe. In this contrast, the medieval city reveals itself as a place of extremes. On one street, a servant scrubs a stone floor in the flicker of a rushlight. On another, a merchant dines on roasted swan, its feathers replaced with gilded ones for display. The poor and the wealthy lived side by side, their fates intertwined, yet their experiences so different they might almost belong to separate worlds. And as night falls, while peasants huddle in straw beds and listen to the wind, nobles recline beneath heavy blankets, drifting to sleep in rooms warmed by well-tended fires. The city holds them all, but the rhythm of their lives could not be more different. And so, our walk through the medieval city comes to an end. We have followed the footsteps of ordinary townsfolk, felt the weight of their routines, and glimpsed the challenges that shaped every day of their lives. We have stepped inside the study of a physician, surrounded by books and remedies that offered hope, though not always cure. We have peered beneath the surface of the city itself, uncovering fragments of clay, seeds, and leather that quietly preserve the rhythm of centuries past. And finally, we have contrasted the weary lives of the many with the comforts of the few, who dined in warmth while others toiled in the cold. The medieval city was not a place of shining romance, nor a place of easy comfort. It was a place of constant labor, of crowded streets and narrow rooms, of smells and sounds that pressed in from every side. Yet it was also a place of resilience, where people endured, adapted, and found meaning in faith, in family, and in the small joys that punctuated their days. As you rest now, imagine the city quieting for the night. The market stalls are empty, shutters closed tight, and the great bell has long since finished its final toll. Lanterns gutter and fade, leaving only the pale silver glow of moonlight washing across rooftops. The noise, the bustle, the struggles, all of it slips into silence, as the city itself seems to breathe slowly and deeply, drifting into slumber. Here, in the stillness, you may find your own rest. Let the past remain where it belongs, far away, its hardships softened by distance. You are safe in the present, in warmth, in comfort, with no need to rise at dawn for water or bread. Allow the rhythm of their lives, so unrelenting, to contrast with the gentleness of your own as you release yourself into quiet sleep. And with that, our story closes. The medieval city fades into memory, its streets empty, its voices silent. Only the calm remains, carrying you gently toward rest, and toward dreams where time itself has no hold. Good night,